Hola, ¿qué tal? Aquí Julio Monroy desde Delta Record. Hoy estamos bien emocionados. Tenemos un invitado que está conectado desde Canadá. Todo este live va a estar en inglés. Y bueno, aquí vamos. Hi, Justin. How are you?
I'm great, Julio. How are you?
Fine, thank you. Thanks for being here, my friend. And we are here with David Sikar. Hi, Sik. How are you?
Hello everyone, how are you? Welcome to this new episode of Producing with Julio Monroy. Remember that if you've got any questions, you can actually ask them through the platform on which you are seeing us, through the comment section, and I'll happily tell both Julio and Justin your questions. So, welcome to this episode.
Thank you, Sik. Well, Justin, thank you. Are you in Canada right
I
now?
am. Yeah, right now I'm here in Toronto, which is
Yeah.
where my studio is and my work. And I'm actually in the studio at Humber College, which is the university that I teach at here.
Oh, that's great. The same hour, right? 5 p.m.
Yeah,
Yeah,
exactly. Eastern
yeah,
Standard Time.
that's great. Okay, Justin. The first question for our guest is, can you tell us more about how did you begin in music and audio production?
Absolutely. So, briefly, to go prior to that, my entrance into music is as a performer. So, I've been a professional bass player for many years. And actually, I was a student at this college in the same program that I now teach. So I went through that program as a bassist and studied to be a professional musician and have years of sort of touring under my belt. But alongside the same time that I was very interested in developing my skills as a performer, I was always really into the idea of recording and editing and just working within Pro Tools. And I you had a little M box and a laptop, and was just started recording things, my own music, rehearsals, whatever I could get my hands on. And slowly but surely, as I was playing in bands, let's say as a bassist, I found myself then helping out by editing the record that we went to the studio to do, and eventually wanting to mix the record or be a part of production. I did spend many years, and I still produce a lot of records, largely within the Canadian community. And so I think that everything sort of came from being a performer and being involved with the projects that way, but then being obsessed with the production side. And so slowly but surely, my career has shifted from being a bass player with sort of a production aspect to being more a producer and mixer, mastering engineer, which we'll talk about more, I'm sure, through this call. And then bass playing sort of having to take a little side chair.
Wow, that's great. So you were a student in that place, right?
Yep.
When did you begin to teach in in the university?
Yeah, it's a great question. So after I graduated from this college, so that's a
Yeah.
4-year bachelor program, I actually went to India for a number of years and started studying Indian classical music.
Wow.
It's a sort of a totally side trip of mine, um, and I was studying like North Indian classical music, both specifically the rhythm and melodic aspects of the music. And when I came back to Canada after about a 2-year period, I approached the college and I wanted to teach sort of a fusion music ensemble. So
Yeah.
I proposed the idea that a bunch of music that I had written that sort of combined Indian, Hindustani classical and South Indian classical music and jazz music, because this is pretty much a sort of a jazz and contemporary music program.
Uh-huh.
I'd written a lot of music, a lot of original music, and I wanted to bring that to the students and bring that to the community. So that's how I started. I started out by teaching ensembles and then eventually bass lessons. And from there, slowly but surely, I've taught a lot of things in this school over the years, including improvisation and composition and arranging. But then over the last sort of 5, 6 years, found myself fully seated in the production department.
Well, so you were living in India like 2 years?
Yeah, no, I didn't stay
Yeah.
there for the entire 2 years.
Okay.
My mom's Indian, so I'm
Oh,
allowed to
okay.
stay there. I was allowed to stay there for long enough, but there's still, you have to have visas to come and
Yeah.
go. So
Yeah,
I
of
would
course.
go for 6 months or 8 months, come back, and then go again. So, but for roughly about a 2 years period, I spent the majority of the time there studying the music.
And how is the music culture in India? It's very different than in Canada.
Yeah, I think so. I mean, obviously, music around the world, we have so many things in common, right?
Yeah.
So it depends on the music that you're talking about. The different part, I would say, is the way that the music is studied, especially the
Hmm.
classical music. So the classical music in India is something that even people who will never become musicians, a lot of people are studying. It's sort of like every kid, not
Okay.
every kid, but many children have access
Like
to wanting to at
basics.
least understand the basics of the musical
Yeah.
structure.
Uh-huh.
And we do have that here as well, but I would say that it's taken even a level more seriously in India as a whole. So everybody learns to sing, everybody learns basic rhythm. Um, and as a result of that, then the classical music scene, even though classical music in India, which is like raga music, if we think of sitar or sarod or sarangi, those kinds of instruments,
Yeah.
and tabla, of course, it, even though it's not the popular music, it's more like orchestral classical music. It's not popular music, but it is very much supported by the government and by people with financial means. It's an artistic culture that is supported, and so there's a certain stature to that music that is held in very special cultural place for I would say a large amount of the population. And so the thing that's very different is that the music is not studied formally in university nearly as much as studied just one on one with a teacher.
Okay.
And it's very much an oral tradition. I mean, I studied with a vocalist, even though I was a bass player. He sang, I sang. We study everything with our voice and learn to articulate it that way, and then bring it to our instrument. And that again is something that is quite a bit different, I'd say, than the way that music is taught in a lot of Western countries. I'm sure possibly where you are as well.
Yeah. Yeah, and I'm curious about that because, well, first of all, you're a musician, so you understand the music, and some engineers are not musicians. So, uh, what do you think about that? It was good for you? Do you think that knowing how to make music and well, everything, play an instrument, uh, has been good to you as an audio engineer?
I think so. Obviously, there are areas of my skills as an engineer that I needed to catch up on because I wasn't in university for that topic, right?
Yeah,
But the thing is that at the end of the day, all of this, everything, it doesn't matter if we're talking about mono or stereo, Atmos, plugins, mixing, mastering, recording, it's all about music, right? It's all
yeah, yeah,
about, regardless of what we're doing, we're capturing musical performance in some capacity. And I think for me, being so intimately connected to music as a performer has taught me some things that I value a lot as an engineer. One of them is just how music feels. And I mean that on an emotional level, but also on a technical level. I mean about the details about what a groove is and why a groove feels the way it does, or, why intonation and tuning of parts feels amazing. Or when we talk about orchestration of parts, as a composer myself, when I'm mixing, I think it's very obvious to me usually what I want to do because I've just thought about the music at that level so much. Now, that doesn't mean that just because you can hear it, you can do it. You need to have the skills as an
yeah. Of
engineer
course,
to be able
of course.
to do those things. But the other is I work on a lot of music with acoustic instruments. Um, and so one thing that I feel very lucky about is I don't really have to think very much about what an instrument sounds like or what I want it to sound like, because I've spent so much time in the room with drummers, saxophone players, string players, piano players, trumpet players, choirs, tabla players from India, instruments from around the world, Persian instruments, South American instruments, African instruments, like so many instruments I've actually been playing with. And I've heard them in rehearsals, I've heard them on stage. And so from that perspective, where I needed to learn was how to make the instrument sound that way. But what I want it to sound like is basically embedded in my memory from just having performed so much with those folks.
Oh, that's amazing, Justin. And talking about audio engineering, who are your mentors or the people that has a big influence in your work?
Absolutely. So I have to go back to one of my first mentors. First is an engineer here in Toronto named Jeremy Darby.
Okay.
Jeremy is a recording engineer of decades of experience who runs a great studio called Canterbury Music Company. And I learned so much from Jeremy being a musician in his studio, and then eventually being a producer in the studio, and then eventually mixing projects that came from his studio. You know, he was someone who's as both a recording engineer, mic placement, and obsession with gear, but also as a great mixing engineer with great ears for acoustic instruments that I learned a great deal from. I think as I move forward, there's a mastering engineer in Toronto named David Travers Smith, who I also learned a lot about and was influenced as a mastering engineer. And then fast forwarding, I'd say to recent times, I have a great deal of respect for so many engineers, really. But Michael Romanowski is a mastering engineer in the both stereo and immersive community that I have a great love for and respect for, and I consider as a mentor and a friend. Bob Katz, Morten Lindberg is someone who I just adore the aesthetic to how to record music. But then also stepping into the pop world, I love Greg Calby's work as a mastering engineer. I'm noticing that there's a lot of mastering engineers on my list. I love, Manny's mixing, Andrew Sheps's mixing, Steve Genowick's mixing, and then obviously, Steve's mentor. I mean, I wasn't ever, personally mentored, but those are people that come to mind. The list could keep going on, but I feel like maybe if I have to put a couple more in, would be as an engineer these days. Hien Cook Lee is an educator, but also brilliant recording engineer that I take a lot of influence from. And let's see. I mean, yeah, I might even just go back to producers from Rudy Van Gelder and early jazz recordings that I think about. But in terms of people who are around now, I'll add to the list George Massenburg and Eric Schilling and Chuck Ainley. These are some names that come to mind right off the top of my head, that I study their work, I adore their work, and I have had chances, especially through some of the conferences, to spend time learning from and being around them when they're presenting.
Yeah, I was going to ask you about that because you were talking about Michael Romanowski and Bob Katz, and I remember that at the beginning of this year at the NAM, you were with Michael, and 2 months ago you were with Bob Katz. And so, how does it feel to be with your mentors in the same talk?
It's a dream, Julio. It's just a dream. It is. So now at the same time, as a musician, as a performer, I've had the fortune of playing with a lot of older
Yeah,
musicians, and that's a part of music, like especially the jazz and world music traditions. It's a part of the history of most music that different generations are working together in music. I think it's one of the things that the world could learn from
yeah, of
music
course.
is the collaboration, not just over different generations, but also culturally, of course. So I've been through all of that as a performer, being on stage with Mike Stern or
Wow.
with Rudresh Mahanthapa or Ingrid Jensen. I mean, I've been on stage with these people playing bass, like for
Wow.
real, on tour, and in those moments, you learn a lot about how to be both. I'm just grateful. I'm so grateful. But also, when you're in that position as a musician, you can't just sit there and be in awe. You need to play. You need to be
Yeah,
there, and you need to be
yeah, of course.
present, right? You're
Uh-huh,
there for
yeah.
a reason. And so I think when I'm
And you're
with,
the bass player. You're the bass player. Very
I'm the
important.
bass player. And
Yeah.
so I think from that experience, I feel like when I come into a situation, let's describe Nam being with
Yeah.
Michael.
Yeah.
I'm in awe of Michael. I'm in awe that I'm there with him. And so I feel very grateful for that opportunity. But then also you have to sit back and say, okay, well, I've been asked to be here for a reason. And you center yourself and just say, okay, well, what is it that I can share? And I'm honored that the opportunities are there, and that they're interested in sharing ideas and collaborating. And then we fast forward, like the AES conference in New York. This one was a real, I was just trying to keep it together, stay calm, but because I had
Oh,
Bob
really? Yeah.
Katz, and then Morten Lindberg, and then Andrew Sheps,
Yeah. Yeah.
and then on one side he and Cook Lee. And I, at any point, I mean, if I wasn't on the stage, I was going to be in the front row of the audience
Yeah.
for sure.
Understand.
And so I feel that gratitude, but it's also when we have opportunities to collaborate with our mentors, there's some of the most important learning opportunities that one person that you can have. And so I try to just be really present, and there's no point in feeling anything but just, again, just I'm supposed to be there to share the experience that I have, and getting into that dialogue is yeah, maybe to come back to the first thing I said, it's a dream, but I
Yeah.
I also just try to be present and share whatever I can.
A good dream. Yeah. Justin, talking more about technical stuff. Mm, for example, if someone asks you to mix a song, what is the first thing that you do if you're going to mix the song in Atmos?
Okay, so because there's two different things, right? If I'm being asked to mix the song or if it's going to be an immersive. The
Yeah.
first thing that we need to do when we do anything with music is to understand the intent or the goal, right? So I'm going to try to unpack, what is that song? What is it trying to tell? What is the story? Who's the artist? What's the audience? Like, what is this piece of art that I'm working with? I think that since you asked about Atmos specifically, there's two major lanes here. And one of them is, and I think it's likely the one that most people are thinking about, is the concept of remixing a song in Atmos. Now, that's only happens sometimes, right? Because the other lane is making new music in immersive audio, and in using Dolby Atmos as the first vehicle for creating that music. But let's go with the first one. I mean, would you say that what you were asking about is likely to be describing the idea of remixing, or do you agree?
Yeah. Yeah. That's right. Yeah.
Yeah, so I think it's very important to call that work spatial remixing. I don't really care what
Okay.
I don't care what people call it. That's what I call it. But I think it's important to understand when it is a remix, because if I'm delivered, which happens, I'm fortunate to do almost every day, I have a stereo master and a bunch of multi-tracks or tracks or stems, whatever the deliverables are. The fact is that stereo master is most likely a map. It's a guide as to what that song is. And of course it is. The artist and the producer and the mixer have probably worked for months, if not longer, perfecting that beautiful song, right? If it's mastered, we can be very, very confident that there has been a lot of effort to bring it to that stage. We all know how long that takes. It doesn't happen in a day. It doesn't matter who you are. And so when I receive that, the first thing that I'm going to do is I'm going to listen to that stereo master and understand the song and understand the balances that the production team have decided on. What's the vibe of the vocal? What is supposed to be loud? How loud is the song? What is the arrangement? What's the arc of the song? Now, from there, I don't have to match that song necessarily. That's up to the artist, that's up to the label, that's up to me, that's up to a bunch of people. And I really think and encourage people to remember that when we're remixing a song, we may have instructions to keep it quite close and congruent, but you might also be working with an artist, and I've done this many times, where they actually want it to be its own thing. And I would actually encourage that this starts to happen more and more, because the listeners get excited when they hear a great immersive production. But to go one step at a time, if I'm remixing the song and the instructions from the artist, or the conversation I've had with the artist or the label or whomever is that, we love the stereo master, we want an Atmos version that feels like it's in the same family, it respects the song, then the first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to listen to that song. And then from there, I'm making decisions to spatially remix, spatially orchestrate those parts. But I'm always checking back in on that stereo master. And I think that the art is finding a way to understand the essence of the song and what has to maintain similarity, and also understand what can be separated to be able to still maintain the song, but also give it this three-dimensionality. So I don't know. What do you think about that?
Yeah, that's great. I think that all that process and how you begin and tell everything is because you are a musician, and that's very important. I like that because you're talking about music. You hear the song, you know the moments, everything, and well, I like that. I don't know, Sig, do you have any question
Yeah,
for this?
I do have a question for you. It's pretty amazing that you're talking the technical aspects from the point of the composers and the intentions of the song. There's something pretty amazing about Dolby Atmos, and it's that you can actually locate your art, your form of art, or your song in a specific place. How do you think that this technology actually boosts your intentions as a composer?
Yeah,
Right.
it's a great question. And I think it is the question that the immersive community, everybody, from musicians to mastering engineers and everywhere in between, this is where we need to really put a lot of energy. And it's not because remixing is not amazing. It is. Remixing songs can be such a great, meaningful experience. But the opportunity that we have, and really why I got into immersive audio in the first place, is not even first as a mixer, but as a composer, is whether we know it or not, the majority of composers alive today, not all, but the majority, have an aesthetic of a two-dimensional canvas to write for. And it's not just on speakers, it's also on a stage. We are used to presenting a band on a stage and then playing out towards the audience. It's a very practical thing to do. It's how it's called the proscenium-based amphitheater. That style of theater is the most common. It's also super practical for having big audiences, right? You can have one little stage and thousands of people. So whether we know it or not, we're very much locked into this idea that space in a composition is left to right. And then, of course, as mix engineers, we create depth and height and all that stuff. But at the source, what the power of immersive audio technology is that we can actually physically present spatialization in music. And when we think about it at the source, it can fundamentally change inspirations for music. I've experienced this myself, and I'm not saying it's better or worse. I'm just saying that if we're going to be working in this environment, it's another parameter, and it means that the canvas is actually this dome around us. And so rather than making a painting that's a beautiful painting meant to be hung on a wall, which again are amazing, we can actually paint something for someone to come inside and to be inside. And so if that inspires somebody to make some amazing music, I want to be a part of encouraging and fostering those composers and those producers and creators to do that. because that's where we're going to hear stuff that we haven't heard before. And the fact is that when we went from mono to stereo, it wasn't just the technology that changed. It wasn't just the recording techniques. We, as producers and composers, people started to write things differently. And more importantly, maybe the multi-track recorder, right? When we get Les Paul creating multi-track recording, it changed the way that composers think about music. And then once one person does it, that changes another and changes another and changes another. So I really think it's a great question, and it's an area that I'm personally pretty passionate about, and I want to see those people come out, and I want to hear some wild music that they write.
Wow. And Justin,
Amazing, thank you.
you were talking about Les Paul and the beginning of multi-track recording, but what was the beginning for you in immersive audio? Because I guess at first you were mixing in stereo, right? Or
Yeah, of course. On the way there, though, I spent quite a bit of time with 5.1. So,
okay.
and so basically, once I heard some music in 5.1 for the first time, and the first thing I ever heard was the Lord of the Rings soundtrack.
Yeah.
But I have all the box sets, and I had them on DVD-A, and now I have them on Blu-ray.
Okay.
It's the original recordings, which are all at Air Studios and Abbey Road, and one other studio I can't remember the name right now. But anyways, they were all recorded, orchestrally with these, and the original mixes that were done in 5.1 of the full cues, so all of Howard Shore's cues, full length, so not chopped off for the film. Those are all available in these box sets. And when I heard that music in 5.1, I had that moment, and this is like, I don't know, it's 15 years ago.
Okay.
So once I heard that was the moment for me that changed, I'd say, my perspective on what was really possible with presenting music. Now, I also love film, and the reality was I also very quickly realized, wait a second, this is what's happening in the movie theater. This is why we love the movies. So I've composed for film over the years, but I'm not an avid film composer.
Okay.
And I didn't ever pursue becoming a film mixer. I don't know why necessarily. I think it's just because I just love working in the music realm. I love working with my colleagues and producing, recordings. And again, I would work in film. I think I would. It just didn't happen. So with all those with that 5.1, I got a 5.1 set up right away. And it wasn't even, I had no gigs. There was no opportunity for me to do anything. And I have a wicked collection of DVD-As, SACDs, and Blu-ray, of course. And honestly, I just listened. I listened to so much music in 5.1 for myself. I started to write some stuff here and there with no real intent of imagining that it could be released. Then once I did that, I showed people within the community, and I did start to work as a mixer for some film and sort of film, and also, like, for instance, there was a project a good friend of mine made for the the big dome theater in Boston, and he was like, "Hey, can you mix this in surround and we'll deliver it there?" So I started mixing music in surround, but I wouldn't say it was like a formal part of my career. Like the folks that I'm discussing, like Morten Lindberg and Bob, and I could go on and on. Eric Schilling and all the folks, Elliot Shiner. These are the original surround mixers, right? I felt like I didn't have any way into that scene at all. I was just standing on the outside, wishing that I could participate, but I didn't even know who to write to or anything. So I was already obsessed with the idea of music and surround. And that's why when I heard about Atmos through the film side, and remember, Atmos has been around in film since about 2012. I started to learn about it because I was interested in film mixing, just to learn, not to do it, in about 2014 or so. So when I first heard about Atmos and music possibly being like a specific delivery format, it instantly I got so obsessed that I just did it. And at that time, like, there wasn't even a renderer to work with. It was more of a concept in my mind that this just is going to be awesome, and I want to participate. So, anyways, I'll stop there in case you have another question, because the story can keep going.
Oh man, it's incredible all the things that you have said because it, all the all of us begins with different paths, you know. And well, The Lord of the Rings is it's a great movie. I love it.
The best.
Oh, the best for me is Back to the Future,
Okay,
but
okay, all right, yeah, that's fair. That's fair. They're all there.
yeah, man, but they are amazing. Hey, Justin, how old are you, my friend?
I'm 38.
38. Okay. I am 40. 2 weeks ago, I was
Hey, happy
39.
birthday.
Thank you, man. Well, and yeah, because it's pretty interesting, all the things that you said. And I know that Lord of the Rings was a movie very important for us. I was like, that was in 2002, I guess. Yeah,
Yeah, I'd have to. Okay,
like
yeah,
20 years
obviously
ago.
there are the three of them, but yeah, it's a long time ago.
Yeah, a long time ago. And have you mix for movies, but not music, like dialogue, effects, not?
No, I really I love that world. I have the greatest respect for them. And but I have never, yeah, I've I guess fortunately for my own passion, I've just always been deeply involved in specifically the music area. Um, but I could see in another life, or who knows what the future brings. I really like I want to hang out with some sound effects editors because I love what they do.
Yeah,
And dialogue editor, like everybody, just they because I love the cinema. I go to the
yeah,
movies. If there's a great movie that comes out that's has a great soundtrack, I'm going. Like, I love the movie, but I'm the one who's like in the movie to the very end because I want to listen to the music score under the credits. Like, that's oftentimes one of the best compositions in the whole thing. um, you're in this immersive audio theater listening to a beautiful system, no matter where you are, even if it's just a 5-1 theater, it's still pretty good. And so, yeah, I just love cinema.
yeah, yeah. Movies are amazing. Justin, you have a very important moment, and you have told us the moment when you heard in 5.1, right? The Lord of the Rings. Do you have an important well moment in your life about a project that you mixed or something that you said, hey, I love that mix of that project?
Yep, absolutely. I've got a couple, and I know what you mean, and I can sort of identify them. I would say the first one is the first thing that I worked on when I set up 714 was my own music. So I took a record of my own, which is called New Horizons, and I remixed it in first 714, and then as soon, like, I mean, the moment that Dolby delivered a renderer, which I think I got in like 2017 or something, and it was not as smooth as we have it today. I'll tell you that much. But I remixed that record, and I spent like 8 months just going in, experimenting, doing this, doing that. And once I finally settled on remixing that album, I feel like that was a big moment for me because it connected my music to my uh, aesthetics of what I wanted to do with sound in this, with height channels and the whole, like. So I still come back to sometimes, even at conferences. I play one of the first mixes that I finished because it tells me a lot about what my intent was before I really knew too much about it. You know what I mean? It's like when you are improvising and you're not thinking, you're just doing. Then I would move to a record by a good friend of mine named Jonathan Kotchuk. The record is called Every When, and it has this white cover. It's on Apple Music. This record is crazy, and it was mixed. It was actually Kerry Thomas at Dolby that connected us, and Jonathan composed this record specifically for 7.1.4, but before Atmos was available. He'd already thought about that speaker array because of, there are other formats, of course, right? IMAX, and there's also Oro 3D, like the idea of that speaker array had existed. And Atmos in theater had already defined it as well. So he wrote this record that way, and then he gave me all of the files, and I'm talking hundreds and hundreds of files, and we mixed that record in 714 in Atmos. That was a really pivotal moment because he showed me what it meant to go to the source and to create music from the ground up for this. And I did that really early on. I mean, that's like 2020. We literally finished it because Apple took it on, and he's like, oh, let's finish this. Now we can actually release it. I think, another one is Snoop Dogg's Doggy Style record. That was a remix from the very ground up. I worked with the team. We went back and got the original tapes and had to start the record from scratch. And, that's just, we're talking about one of the most important records of all time, certainly one of the top hip hop albums ever created. So the ability to be trusted with that and to reimagine that music. And then most recently, it's not released yet, but it's my own record that I recorded here, actually, and I composed specifically for Immersive and recorded for the Immersive from the ground up. And again, I feel like it's been a little bit of a full circle moment to come back to, okay, this is what I want to do with it. When it's my own music, when I have the ability to make all the decisions, this is the world that I would like to present to people.
Yeah, I remember that at the NAMM show, there was a video of your.
That's the one.
Yeah, it was
Yep.
amazing. It was beautiful.
Thank you.
Do you have that music on Apple Music or?
No, it's coming out this year. It's coming out in June. It'll be fully released, but I'll start releasing a single in probably end of March.
Yeah, the sound was spectacular. I remember that moment because you were there at the NAMM show and you were playing, and I said, "Wow, that guy looks like Justin Gray," but I don't know if he's Justin Gray. Yeah, so that's great. When you release the music, please tell us because I like.
I will indeed. I will. Thank you.
Thank you. Sik, we have questions for Justin.
Yeah, I do have a question. So, what I'm getting from all that you are telling us is that basically starting a music production on Dolby Atmos is basically adding a new dimension to the art form. And it's really different to compose for the format, and it's different to mix. It's completely different to mix Dolby from stereo. What do you think is the starting point for a producer to start thinking on Dolby Atmos?
Yeah, it's a good question. Now, from a pure language standpoint, as a teacher, I really think that it's important to understand that I don't compose in Dolby Atmos. I compose with spatial information, right? I orchestrate spatially. What Dolby Atmos does is it provides the production container. So I could produce music in Dolby Atmos, but as a composer, I actually think it's more important to just imagine the space, imagine the parts, imagine where you want to hear things, and the way to get started with that, to your original question, is probably to listen to a lot of music and listen to a lot of immersive music and start to develop a love for, I love when I hear this. I love when I hear a choir behind me. I love when I hear drums here, or I love when I hear percussion. All of those things become a part of our aesthetics, just the same as stereo, right? I love hearing a tight kick drum and an 808 and a bass right down the center. Well, when you listen to it and you like it, then when you go to produce music, you're probably going to pull from that inspiration. So I think that people should find ways to listen and to think about what they like. You don't have to like everything, right? Not everyone's going to like decisions I make or vice versa, but We all listen to music and we pull and create our own perspective on it. But then when you talk about the Atmos side, Atmos comes in at the production stage. It becomes that vehicle. And so I will say that as a composer, if you understand the technology, then you can make really strong decisions that will translate into that technology. And by that, I mean, as an example, I composed this music specifically with the idea of 9 and 6 as locations for musicians. Because I know that come mix time, that's pretty much, plus the LFE, of course, that's pretty much where this technology is capable of really presenting at its fullest. But when we get to a movie theater, and I remix this record in cinema for cinema as well, that expands, and 9 and 6 is no longer a number. So again, you just start to think about the space. And so I think that it's helpful for people to understand that you could compose for immersive audio and not be an engineer. And that's probably necessary because not everybody can be a composer and not everybody can be an engineer. And that's okay. The greatest classical composers of all time are not all recording engineers. That's where the team, right? We team up with people to bring art to life. So I don't know. What do you think? Is that a helpful answer?
Really helpful. Thank you. We
Yeah,
actually have
that's
a.
true. That's true.
That was an
Not all
amazing answer.
the 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 composers or songwriters are engineers. That's
Yeah.
true. Yeah.
We do actually have a question from Andres Trillos. He's asking, Justin, what would you say is the best way to start in the audio industry in Canada?
The best way, of course, is to be here and develop relationships. So start with the musicians. It might be that if you already have connections, then you have good skills, that you start working with a band and you do a great project with them, and then they tell someone else, oh, I loved working with Andres, and vice versa. I mean, that's how the music industry does largely work, based on combinations of word of mouth and experience. But there's also, I think, is networking among not just engineers, but among musicians, like being at concerts, being at gigs, doing live sound possibly, or being an editor to help get projects off the ground. I mean, we can't always just jump into like, okay, I'm going to mix this record in Atmos. It takes time. And at the end of the day, music industry is all about relationships, right? It's all about the relationships we build over time. So I would say that the most important is to find a community that you're inspired by and that you have something to offer to, and then embed yourself in that community, be a part of the events, and be a part of the fabric of that, whether it's concerts or events or whatever. And then from those relationships, it naturally evolves. Hey, I'm doing a record. Hey, I'd love to help you with that record. Cool, you do this one. Then that artist says, I had a great time, and tells somebody else, and it sort of works like that.
Yeah, and going to events is very important. For example, I meet you at the NAM, then we were at the AES, and well, there's an event that is very important in Mexico next year. It's the Pan American Audio Conference Educators. Can you tell us more about that, Justin?
Absolutely. I mean, so, John Crivet is a force of nature, to say the least, and someone who's so deeply passionate about education. I mean, this. It's hard. It's impossible to even keep up with how much love and dedication John has for the the topic and the area of music education. And so it's something that he's really looked to develop alongside Soundcheck Expo, of course. And so I'm so looking forward to the opportunity to be with, folks like yourself and educators from other parts of the world, so that we can discuss these topics, and we can also share topics from different perspectives. Because like you asked with that question early on about what's different about Indian music. Well, the fact is that the way that we teach and the way we think about teaching is directly related to the cultural setting that we're in. And so I know that there's going to be amazing ways of considering thinking about music education from just being around the educators there that will expand the way that I think. And I'm looking forward to also sharing that back to that community and see where the conversations go.
Sick has a beautiful video of the event. Tell us more.
Okay, so yeah, there's going to be this event in Mexico, Pan American Audio Educators Conference. Next year, it's going to take place from March 29 to the 31st. It's going to be at the World Trade Center from Mexico City, and it's going to be at the same time with Sound Tech Expo. There are going to be a lot of educators, developers, thought leaders. You're going to be able to meet them. We've got this pretty nice schedule, and it's an event organized by Hey Audio Student. So just arrive at Benito Juarez Airport, and of course a huge shout out to the sponsors of the event as well. So you might want to go to this event. It's going to be really great. They're going to talk about a lot of different topics, and well, we all hope to see you there next year for the Pan American Audio Educators Conference.
Yeah, I'm very
Beautiful.
excited about that event in Mexico. Have you been in the sound check?
I have not been to Soundcheck. No, it's like I was, to be honest, after talking to Michael and a couple other folks from last year, I was going to go to Soundcheck Expo anyways, and then the ability to have this also sort of just before and sort of crossing over with it is perfect, right? It means that so many more people will be gathering.
Yeah, it's going to be great, and I want to thanks to John Krivit for creating this event and everything, because I know you because John Krivit. We met at NAM, so that's great. Justin, a last question.
Sure.
There's a lot of people creating music, young people dreaming to be a mixing engineer, and yeah. So, what is your advice for that people, for the new generations?
I think first and foremost, if we're going to do anything, any career, but definitely in music, remember that, we just have to be so passionate about this topic. And so hold on to that love of music, that deep, like burning passion for it, because that's the thing that is going to drive and give you the energy to be able to sort of keep up with the reality and the pace of the music industry, which is it's fast. There are long days. There's a lot. It's a never-ending learning cycle. You're never done. But I feel for myself, every day I just wake up, I feel very grateful for the opportunity to just be involved in music, and that is a gift. So hold on to that. The second is, don't skip over the fundamentals. And that means not just as a mix engineer, as a you don't have to be a talented performer to be a mixer, but you need to understand music. You need to have your ears. You need to have good ears. You need to have confidence in what you hear and the ability to then translate that to what you do. But it starts here. It's all here. And then outside of that is, as much as the brain is involved, and there's a lot of benefit to understanding the technology with our, in a sort of academic style, is remembering that it is about feeling. Our goal is to translate the feeling of music through recording. So to do that, we also have to listen a lot. So again, it comes back to our ears. It's just, and so when you're studying the fundamentals, don't skip out on studying the fundamentals of not just sound, but also of music. And don't rush through the fundamentals of what it means to mix music. For instance, we get into Dolby Atmos, one of the more complicated things that you could do realistically, because it's all of the factors of stereo mixing, plus the spatialization, plus some really technology to sort of learn to control. But at the end of the day, the most important thing is balance and volume. And it doesn't matter if you're mixing in mono or you're mixing in 18 speakers or 35 speakers. It's all about balance. And again, this comes back to our ears and understanding what we want and how to balance those instruments. So yeah, I guess the big recommendation is maintain your love for music. Don't let that go anywhere. It's a big asset, and focus on the core fundamental skills and be exceptionally grounded in your musicality and your skills as a mixer, and then all of the advanced stuff will come. It'll come, and you'll learn to use it in your own way and do amazing things with it.
Thank you.
Thank you,
Thank you,
Justin.
Justin.
And just to have like a better picture of what's going on with Dolby Atmos and the immersive experience in music production, what do you think is actually going to happen with the music production in the future due to the immersive audio? Do you think that this technology is going to mark like this huge changing event, just like mono and stereo did when this new stereo technology came up?
It's a really good question. I think that technically speaking, that has already happened, in the sense that we now have a massive amount of music that is being presented in 3 dimensions. Of course, the biggest challenge is not producing it, it's translating it to our audience. And this was the challenge with 5.1, it was the challenge with Quad, it's the same challenge that one of the original surround productions of Fantasound, right? So Fantasia, the movie, was a quad system. Also, really great people who work in electroacoustic and acousmatic music who are presenting really crazy concerts with tons of speakers, like unique speaker arrays. The ability to translate it to our audience is our biggest challenge. Now, Dolby Atmos is the thing that changed the access level for people to create immersive music. That realistically, it's not a missing link, but the next step, as we already identified, is music to be created with immersive intent. That's what I'm advocating for. I think that's what I want to see. I want not just composing, but also recording, producing, having music created in ways that we fully utilize the potential of this, just the same as the Beatles and everyone at Abbey Road fully utilized this potential of the stereo field, and then all of a sudden, people get excited. I mean, the Beatles weren't involved in their first stereo mixes, but you know what I mean. Once stereo became adopted. As for this concept that it will, stereo's done, I never agreed with it. I never have said that that's what Atmos will do, and I still wouldn't say it today. The thing is that stereo is exceptionally practical. The majority of the music of the world, popular music or recorded music at least, has been produced in stereo, and so still our largest catalog of music exists in that format. And it's amazing. I could sit down and listen to music on these 2 ATCs right behind me, and I could be absolutely immersed, right? It's so I really do not like the idea of it being a competition. I never supported it, and I never will. So what I think needs to happen is we need to recognize that immersive audio is capable of this level of expression, and we need to create music for it. We need to produce music for it. We need to remix records the best we can to really get the most out of the technology we can. And then the missing link is to continue to provide ways for listeners to have meaningful experiences hearing immersive. And of course, binaural is one of them. And binaural can be a wonderful listening experience. It can. But we also need to find ways, and you and I can't do this. It's the companies. Companies need to continue to unpack ways of delivering object-based audio to listeners where they can have a spatial experience. And I think we just have to be patient. I think that the companies have already demonstrated that they're trying and they're doing great things with it. So for now, I just keep making the best music I can. I know my colleagues, Julio, I know you, everybody I know who's doing this. We're just making the best we can. And then we have to just continue to push forward together and see where it goes.
Yeah, continue doing the best we can. That's right. That's right. Thank you. Thank you, Yasin.
Okay, so a little announcement. Remember that you're going to be able to listen to this episode again on streaming platforms. You just get to your streaming platform, Spotify, Apple Music, wherever you like to listen to podcasts, and you will find a podcast edition of this live show. You just look for Produciendo con Julio Monroy, and you can see this episode and all the other episodes. So unfortunately, the time for this live it's ending. If you've got any questions, is the moment to do them right now because we are running out of time. And Justin, thank you a lot for being here with us. It's a huge honor to have you here, and it's inspiring to meet you. I actually see a lot of your work and the things that you have done, and I think it's pretty amazing. So thank you a lot for being here with us.
Thank you. It's my pleasure. I do see a question, and it's, if anyone wants to keep in touch, obviously on social media is very, very easy. So you already had the social links there.
Yep, I do.
So folks can always reach out, and through the website as well. I've got the website pretty organized where there's also lots of access to see some of the work that I've done, and the record that's going to come out next year will obviously be all of these. YouTube, Instagram, and the website will be the three places where the primary content is there. And I'm looking forward to making quite a lot of, I've actually already made most of it, but for everybody who knows, it's one thing to mix music, it's one thing to record music, it's one thing to write music, but releasing music, that's hard.
Yeah.
Actually going through and doing the distribution and properly releasing music, this is another art form that I respect. I respect everybody who does it at the highest possible level. And so I'm doing it for my music, and it's taken time.
Yeah.
It takes time. So I'm trying to do it right, but definitely I have a lot of educational content around the making of that music that I'm looking forward to sharing on social platforms and YouTube.
Amazing.
Yeah, David has a rock project.
I do.
Yeah,
I do have a rock project.
A rock star. So
I'm not a rock
pretty
star.
hard. Yeah, you look at him.
I look like one, but I'm not one.
Yeah, but it is very difficult.
It's really hard. It's really, really hard. So, well, thank to all the people that have come and listened to our conversation. Again, Justin, thank you so much for being here. I'll just take the word to Julio.
Thank you, Yosin. It was amazing to talk with you, and I hope to see you at NAM. Yeah, 1 month, and then in Mexico.
Yep.
Well,
exactly.
Yeah, we're going to be connected. Thank you for everything, and for all the knowledge, the advice, and everything. It's gold for us. Thank you.
My pleasure. Thank you. And thanks obviously to everybody who's listened. And I can't wait to see you in Los Angeles, Julio.
Yeah, we will see. Okay. Well, this has been our live stream. So thank you, everyone. Next week, we are going to have a guest. He's from Ecuador. His name is Renato Zamora. So he's a music producer, and it's going to be great. So see you until next time. Bye-bye.